So to explain further what the tricep brachii long head is, which is the long head of the triceps, is that basically it is a particular muscle that crosses the elbow and the shoulders. So not only does your elbows basically contribute to elbow flexion, it also does this. Only on the long head of the tricep brachii does this actually. So that's how he stretches it as well. The other heads, like the lateral head and the medial head, doesn't really care too much about the shoulder changing its positions, really. So, but that is the trivia about how that muscle work. Let's talk about that one time where Mike Isotel said that you can train basically the long head of the triceps with a pulling compound exercise, which sounds really strange on paper, but it does somewhat make sense. The only problem is that there isn't that many compound pulling exercises that stretches the long head of the triceps really well, but does it add up on the fractional sets? Uh, Kinda, not really to the long head. The problem with like a dumbbell pullover is that the long head of the tricep is half stretched. Technically, you can stretch it more if you bend the arms right there. And I don't know if there's an exercise that lets you, train like this, this movement. At that point, you can make the argument that, you train the long head of the triceps quite well, actually, ironically. It's just a weird way of training your long head of the triceps. I might try out for the memes, for, supersetting with French presses, and then doing basically some weird pull or basic pullover with my arms bent over. Kinda. But anyway, so whenever you do a vertical row, right? A vertical row. What am I saying? Vertical pulling exercises, like for example, lat pull down. It can be like a pull up. You do this motion right there, and you're kind of stretching the long head. I mean, in this position, right, it is half stretched. If you want to fully maximize the stretch on the long head of the brachii on the triceps, you have to bend your arms, essentially. That is how much you can get basically the stretch right there, and it should be quite fine. But that's kind of the flaw when it comes to like only relying on pulling compound exercises to train your long head. And when it comes to like the pullover, right? Whenever you do this, it does somewhat train the long head. You're kind of getting the half stretched on the long head, kind of, whenever you do this. So that's about it, really. And whenever you do a row, right, it's kind of like this movement right there. Would it train the long head? Not really. I mean, this is like the one exercise that doesn't really hit the long head that much, actually, in that position. It does hit it doesn't really hit the long head at all, actually. I mean, a little bit, but not something substantial to make a comment about it. So there are some truth to it that the long head of the triceps does get trained, but that is the same argument regarding about like if you talk about overhead presses, it can be like bench presses. Not really with bench presses, it doesn't really hit the long head of the triceps that well, but overhead presses, it does kind of do that. If you do like French presses or behind the neck presses, it does target the long head quite well, actually. So that's just my comment about it. So there are some kernel of truth that the pulling compound exercises does train the long head to a certain degree, but not so much to the point where I will only rely on pulling compounds to develop my long head of the triceps. That's kind of bad advice. I will not really go up to a person and be like, yo, you should only rely on training the long head of the triceps using pulling compounds and ditch all of the, I don't know, tricep extensions and French presses or isolations to hit the long head of the triceps. So that's my thoughts so far regarding about the long head of the triceps. So yeah, basically that.